Are my glasses straight?
I think so. Yep.
I hope so. Okay. How the town's name evolved is a little bit of a mystery to those of us who live here. It was Cross Keys originally, named for a hotel swinging sign for the illiterate travelers that could only recognize a picture. It was Cross Keys up to about 1814, I think.
There are a number of theories on why the town got its name. The reason it needed a new name was Cross Keys was also a different second town in Pennsylvania. So we needed a post office and we needed a new name for the post office.
The name change came before my time, before any of our times. There's several different theories as to why that happened.
I think it's the intercourse of the two major roads, 772 and 340. It makes sense to me in the days of the Conestoga wagon, if you were coming up 340 and you needed to know where the nearest hotel was or the blacksmith because your horse threw a shoe, you would say up there the intercourse of the two roads, there's a hotel and the blacksmith is right behind.
The most logical one for me is that there was a race course at the end of town and there was a big sign that said Intercourse, and it evolved to Intercourse as a one-word name.
Then there is one about the race course, which I did not believe until I found a diary written in 1910 from a man who used to talk about going to the fairs in Intercourse and losing his money at the horse races. And then I thought to myself, well, Intercourse was founded by Irish people, not Amish people, and Irish people are great horse people, so it's highly likely they were running horses and having races.
The earlier days, the term intercourse a lot of times was meant to talk about social interaction and being engaged with your community and so forth. So that's the theory that I like the best. I don't think anybody's ever going to know for sure how it did happen, but for me, the community is still so important, and it's such an engaged community, and that there is so much social intercourse in our community that it just seems so natural for that to be the reason that they picked for it. And that's the one I'm sticking with because I really do like that.
You know, I do get sometimes media requests from people asking, you know, making jokes with the name. MTV came out with a web-based show that wanted to kind of poke fun at the name.
It's funny, but you know what? Charles Dickens used it in the last paragraph of A Christmas Carol. He said, Scrooge went on to have no further intercourse with spirits. It was a perfectly usable word in the mid-19th century.
Growing up in this town, it never really seemed like it was an odd or an unusual name. It just seemed like that was the name, so you didn't really think about it too much. When I did start working in the hospitality industry, and you certainly want to get your name out there, it was very easy to put the name out there a little bit more. So yes, I think it has had an impact. It has helped to tell our story, but you still have to have the story. You still have to have the reason to come here.
When I was growing up, when it first started, the first tourist business here was a little gift shop. And that actually started in the basement of my neighbor's house in the development I lived in when I was a kid. He moved uptown here. He was one of the first ones.
So I grew up in the town of Intercourse. My parents were entrepreneurs. My father was an entrepreneur. He was from Philadelphia, so he was from the city. He knew the fascination people would have with the Amish way of life and with the whole county's way of life. He always wanted to have his own business, so he bought a jelly business in Harrisburg that was a bunch of kettles and brought it to his garage. It was for a bakery, an industrial bakery. So they put it in big cans and they delivered it to Philadelphia and they put it on their sticky buns. At the same time, there were people who were learning about the Amish, becoming fascinated with them, and finding their ways around the county. And so he invited them in, and they could watch local Amish girls making the jelly. And they could come in and watch that. And then he decided that retail was going to be easier than wholesale. And so we opened a shop and invited people in. And that was the beginning of Kitchen Kettle in the garage.
Tourism is great in Lancaster County as a whole. I mean, people come here from across the country and across the world because they are interested in that simple way of life, the Amish way of life. I did meet with a writer, it was probably 2 years ago, and he was doing a piece on Intercourse. And the whole thing was that he was, I forget if he was a journalist in Philadelphia, outside the area, and people were writing in on where he should visit. What town do you want me to visit? And he got a lot of people wrote in and said, Intercourse, go to Intercourse, PA. And I remember talking to him on a Saturday morning, and he said, you know, this kind of started out as a joke. It was my followers telling me where I should go and visit. This is a really cool place. The area is beautiful. I love it. We had a TikToker that was here, and she's PA junkie, so she was looking for people to, you know, tell her where to go, where to visit, and she came to Kitchen Kettle because somebody that works here said, come to Kitchen Kettle. She has a blog, and she was like, wow, this area, you know, she's like, I'm in Intercourse, and she's like, but this area is so cool. And we had people come in requesting the coffee that she was drinking that day from the Roasted Rooster. And so I do think sometimes people come here like, oh wow, this would be fun, just a cool town name, I want to visit it.
People just have to say they've been to Intercourse.
I think the name is 100% why the tourism comes here that much.
We're up the road from Blue Ball and, you know, up down the road from Paradise.
The name brings them here for the first time. After that, you could call it whatever you wanted to, and they'd still come back. But as far as first-time visitors, the name Intercourse is a big draw, really is.
Yeah, we do have some people that like to take pictures in front of our signs on each end of town, doing something they shouldn't be doing in front of the sign. But anyway, that's, you know.
I mean, we use the name Intercourse on our things. There's a lot of people that want to mail something from here, and they want the Intercourse postmark on it. So they go across to the post office. Students come here, a lot of high school kids, they all go to the Good Vibes t-shirt shop. They were here in May, a group of students lined up, like 100 of them, trying to buy their I Love Intercourse t-shirts.
Well, the tourism has definitely altered the town significantly. The town itself, it pushed a lot of the residential uses to the outskirts of town, and the town is basically turned into tourist businesses.
The tourism is great for the town. It really is. I would say it's affected the town in a very positive way. It's brought a lot of people, which brings money, which brings taxes, which helps us improve things. So we love the tourists, especially those of us who are merchants. Now, the locals who don't have stores in town really don't like all the traffic on weekends. You know, I used to hate the traffic until 10 years ago when I opened the store, and it's like, oh, I love the traffic, bring it, you know, it's okay, traffic's backed up. It means a lot of people are here. But tourism is very welcome in this area. We all recognize that without tourism, we'd still be a nice community, farming, you know, the fields and carpenters and so forth, but we wouldn't be thriving. Without tourism, we would not be thriving like we are now.
The tourists are terrible. You know, they want to be in their world, but then they come to ours. The pandemic was wonderful. Nobody came. You could drive wherever you wanted to.
Well, so the town's interaction with tourism has been something that we've looked at over the years, and we've seen a change. One of the things that I was just recently looking over some old newspaper clippings and some information from the 1970s when we were first addressing zoning and some of the things that all communities had to deal with in those timeframes. And there was a strong, very strong negativity towards increasing the ability for tourism. There was definitely a wish to keep the outsiders away from the community and so forth, and that was both the Amish community and the non-Amish community. And now when I look at how things are, 50 years later, there is a great amount of support for tourism. Overall, there's a much more willingness to embrace the tourist industry, and we realize that we get a lot of benefit from that. And the tourism industry has given back greatly to the community then too, so it's sort of a balance there.
Tourism is important to me because it's my livelihood. And I like to be a tourist when I leave home.
Almost 1 million tourists a year come to the village of Intercourse.
Most of them say it's a very neat, quaint little town. To me, it has changed so much. It was a quaint little town. It's more of a commercialized town now. But to them coming here, they didn't see it the way it was that I saw it 60 years ago. When I was 10 years old and running around the town. The people that come here seem to enjoy it, and a lot of them come back year after year. And my wife manages a motel property, and she has return people that come every year. Some come 2-3 times a year, and they just love it. So, if you're not from here, I guess the attraction is different than it is if you're from here.
I think that the Amish are definitely what bring the tourists here, the way of life that we have, the beauty of the area. It's just a lifestyle that they might have remembered their grandparents talking about, and it still exists here. And this is what they want to come to see and recapture those feelings. Maybe it helps them to connect back to their family roots. People are so untethered. They're not connected anymore. Yeah. Connections are really important in Lancaster County. It's generally accepted that yes, Intercourse is the place to go if you want to see the Amish and get the Amish experience. And the big difference that I see is the Amish have kind of joined the bandwagon. 50 years ago, they would really have nothing to do with tourists. If a camera was aimed in their direction, they would have turned around or put up their hand. That does not happen now. But everything has to evolve, and we all need to make livings.
The Amish tolerate the tourists. They have certain beliefs, one of which is that they don't have craven images of themselves. But the English insist on taking photos after photos after photos. And the Amish really don't appreciate that. And they've adapted. You'll notice that at the end of almost every Amish farm driveway is a little stand. Not only is it there for the locals, it's there for the tourists. They've adapted to having the tourists. If the tourists are bringing money, the Amish will take the money just like anybody else will.
The Amish community and tourism are kind of synonymous. Without the Amish community, there wouldn't be tourism here. That's what pretty much prompted the tourism to start with. People coming to see the Amish community, see how they lived, see how they functioned. The Amish back then were very isolated. They stayed a lot to themselves. Now, because of tourism, they're much more accessible. You'll see you'll see them riding around with tourists, and it's just things that they would never have done before.
It is a concern that we're not taking advantage of the Amish community. The other side of that is in surveys and in questions and so forth, a lot of the reason people come to Lancaster County, a lot of the reason people come to the Village of Intercourse is to see the Amish and to interact with them and to be engaged with them. So it's one of those tough issues that we have to deal with too, where there's a balance of certainly not exploiting or taking advantage, but allowing our guests and visitors and people that we invite to our community to certainly interact with them and stuff. So it's something that we continue to work on. We do believe that the Amish community has embraced the tourism industry. They want to be a part of it.
So the best thing is to learn how to work within their framework and then just let them be. And when people really adamantly think, well, the Amish should do this, this, and this, I'm like, you're not really getting it, because they bring so much value. Just let them be, let them do what they do.
They're some of the greatest neighbors you could ever have. If you walked onto an Amish farm and told them, hey, I ran out of gas, do you have some gas I could have? They'll give it to you. They'll give you a meal if you ask for them. If you ask and they have, they'll give. They'll share what they have because that's their beliefs.
I only know what's right here because this is what I see. I have Amish neighbors on both sides. The Amish neighbor this way, the lady's down the store, she sews for me. I take her everywhere. I get her groceries. I make her doctor appointments. I mean, it's like my sisters, like family members.
If you ask a question about their beliefs, their faith, out of trying to expand your knowledge while you're being respectful, it's great. You can learn an awful lot, and you do really have to respect them for maintaining that culture for almost 300 years. If you're respectful of it, they will explain why they do all they do and things like that. It's really nice.
The biggest challenge for the Amish community right now is technology. My parents were Amish. They left the Amish church. And so a lot of my aunts and uncles are Amish, a lot of cousins are Amish. And we have a neighbor who's an Amish preacher. We've lived beside him for 35 years, so we talk a lot. And he told me the other day, he said, Carl, he said, the biggest problem right now is the internet, technology. Before the internet came along, like 5-10 years ago, the Amish preachers, who are really the ones who enforce the rules for the Amish children, they had a real tight grip on the culture. And when you send your Amish child to an Amish school, you have no radio, no TV, you can form that child for the first 15 years in a bubble, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, and that child will grow up thinking what you want them to think.
Cell phones are the best thing that ever happened to them because now they don't have wires connected to the phone, so nobody knows they have it. They just have it in their pocket.
Everyone knows that the Amish have their own way of doing things, and they live by their rules, maybe not so much yours and mine. For example, if you were driving a car and you didn't have your child in a child seat and you were in an accident, you would be prosecuted. If you're Amish, the children fly out of the buggy. If they get into trouble, like with drinking or drugs, they say, well, the bishop will take care of it. One of the expressions around here is, well, they're Amish. It covers a multitude of sins. And I don't say this in a vicious way. I'm just saying those of us who live here know they have their set of rules and we have our set of rules. In most cases, that works. It's a little unfair to everybody else who lives here, but we know it and we accept it. The local people also deplore the fact that the roads always have to be repaired so often because of the horses' hooves.
There's a significant impact on the roads from the horse and buggies. Being in the public works side of this, I would guesstimate that right now that about 75% of my road budget goes toward fixing horse damage. Every year we go through what we call horse tracking, because as they go down through, they make a track and they keep digging it out. We got to come back and fill that back in and then overdo the road. We do about 7, 8 miles of that a year and keep rotating to try to keep up with it.
One of the things that I think we will need to look at in the future is housing and the ability for people to be able to afford to live in our community. It is a small community. Our housing quota is not that large, and so we want to encourage people to move into our community. We may need to be looking at ways that we can ease some of that housing demand and increase it a little bit.
More and more of the old-time neighbors are passing, they're elderly, and their homes are coming up for sale, and they're being snapped up in 2 days for Airbnbs. And the big change is the Amish are buying them for Airbnbs.
You don't live in the town. You have to understand that you're probably not going to live in the town, because there really isn't much housing available in the town. You have to live in the developments outside of the town.
And the thing about the Amish is there's many Amish who are multimillionaires, many, many, many. It's nothing for a young Amish guy who's not married to buy a house and to rent it out. They're very sharp in that way.
Well, I see the housing prices being so high is somewhat of a con to the evolution, because it's made us very aged community, and we don't have the youth that we used to have. We don't have the kids coming along. You don't have that generational turnover that is healthy for a community to have. Your kids grow up here, they may move away for a little bit like I did, come back, and it's very difficult for them to stay here because they just can't afford to be here.
But I do think people, with the Amish, the way of life, and the way we are so connected, that people kind of look at that as like, oh, romanticize it. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh wow, it'd be so great just to disconnect and, and live their lifestyle. And
you can come in as an English and go, well, why don't you guys do this? And why don't you guys do that? Or you can come in with the attitude of, okay, this is your way of life.
It is a very strong community. If something happens bad to you, they will be there within the hour. I mean, they rally around each other. It can be sickness, it can be a barn burning down. Just happened a few weeks ago, a barn burnt. The next week, they were cleaning that thing up and building it. I went past 5 days later, and the skeleton of a new barn was there. And that just happens instantaneously. It's because their community is so strong. It's so tight.
They're very smart, they're very creative, they're ingenious about many different things. They're also very committed to their life and their religion and their faith. And balancing that is hard. And they do it as best they can, and they take each situation as it comes.
I think through our upbringing, we have the idea of what is important in life. Not the hurly-burliness of it, but the simple things, the quiet things. And I think we were all raised to practice that and to love it. And I think that's what makes us different. The hardest thing for visitors to understand is how a town with so many plain people in it, such a religious area, can have a name such as Intercourse. But the thing is, that's the only place that could have a name like Intercourse.
It's been that name since I've been born and before that, so why would I want to change it? I'm used to it. I turned 18 in Chicago, and I had to register for the draft out there at that time, back in the 60s. And it took me a very long time. And when I gave that lady my driver's license, and she looked at the address on it, she had to show it to everybody in the place, that there is actually a place with this name, look. And so, yeah, sometimes it's a hindrance, but for the most part, it wasn't too bad.
I don't believe I'd ever change the name of the town, because it's who we are. And it is a great conversation starter. I've used it to great advantage in awkward situations. It always brings a chuckle. And I think we wouldn't recognize ourselves if we changed our name.
As an older, wiser person, do you know how many maps they would have to rewrite if we changed the name of our town? You would screw up so much stuff if you changed the name of the town. As a firefighter here, I'm a member of the Intercourse Fire Company. I'll walk through an airport wearing one of these shirts just to see people go,
Those of us who live here know how blessed we are, and we really are. And we don't ever want to lose it. If I could tell anybody, the people that come to visit, the tourists that come, they come year after year. They'll come 4 times a year. They always come. When they come, they say, oh, I'm so glad to be here. Now I can relax. It's just a feeling of serenity here. And you can't bottle that. They have to come here for it. This is how life should be and used to be. And this is how they can get a little piece of that back by coming. So I think we'll always be popular as long as we stay true to who we are.
People ask you where you're from. My typical line is, well, I'm from Intercourse, but then isn't everybody. So that just kind of stops the whole conversation right there.